Did we just have the deepest on-ramp ever? Did we do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
You just said before I hit broadcast, you just said, and there's the podcast.
And there's the podcast.
We've literally been talking for 50 minutes. Oh, well, okay, let's see if we can squeeze. Let's see what we can do here. You okay if I start?
Load it up.
Okay, so I want to just flip away from DeCodEd podcast as with my teacher hat on. And I want to put my dad hat on for a second because that's a huge part of the things we've talked about. So as the dad part, I want to talk about my youngest son's hockey for a second. So yesterday they played in game 2 of the championship series and they won. So they were champions yesterday. They are champions.
Cool.
And so I'm wearing the Wolves hat in honor of my son and his team and the sacrifices they've made to get to where they are, which is huge because, some of this podcast has revolved around my son's hockey schedule. Like he's got to commit, so we can't do it here. Can we do it there? And you've talked about the things you do with your kids, and it's part of what we do. It's part of who we are. It makes life fun. So that was an awesome moment for me as a dad yesterday to see my son win and to be part of that. And then to see my older son support his younger brother on a very important day in his life. And I know it sounds kind of corny, but between last year and this year, my kid and his team had made it to 4 finals in tournaments, and they couldn't win any of them. And so this is a sweet victory for them because they finally, my son and a group of kids that he played with last year, they finally won a championship. And so that's a big deal for them with respect to their context. So that's the first thing I want to say. The second thing is you can see here I've got some products beside me.
I noticed, yeah.
Let me fill you in on that. So the joke this year on the hockey team is that whenever the adults talk about adult beverages, I refer to Crush as a drink that I prefer to have. And the other day I went to an in-service at one of the elementary schools in my board, and I knew that there were 2 kids that go to that school that are connected to my son's hockey team. So one of the kids plays with my son, and then his sister is at the games, and she's always kind of milling around with the parents. And so I thought, well, when I go to the school for my in-service, I'll just pack a couple of bags of treats and leave it for them at the office. And so I left it for them at the office, and the admin assistant made sure they got it. And then, they were very thankful and appreciative that I had done that for them. So yesterday when I dropped my son off at the game, they presented me with these beverages as a thank you to them. And so there's kind of like a full circle dad teacher coming together to lead me to certain places, to lead people to do kind things like this. And they didn't have to do that. I didn't want them to do that. I was going to their school. They're good kids. I literally see them all the time. So I thought, hey, well, I'm in that mode that no matter where I went, if there was a kid there that I know from hockey or for whatever, I would have packed a bag of goodies and dropped them off at the office just to say, hey, I'm in your building and here you go. Live it up a little bit, when your parents aren't around. So I just kind of wanted to send a shout out to the dad side of what we do, because it's the part that I know you and I talk education. It's like our bread and butter, but I think it's safe to say that's not 100% of our life. It's what we do, and we enjoy doing it. I don't know about you, but I feel like the universe has led me to it, even though sometimes I don't feel like I belong. There are experiences outside that are more powerful or equally as powerful. And so I just wanted to drop that today as we started.
I like that. It's cool. My it's interesting to sort of think about, I think about the hockey experience, your hockey experience, from the different videos that you've posted. and I can't not think of some of the team videos and you messing with your video, I guess your growing video hobby, but it's becoming kind of like a little bit more than that. And I think back on the how there was an element of, actually, it's the wrong way to start this. I guess I wonder if in finding the way to sort of curate and capture stuff that was going on with the game, if you felt like that was drawing you closer to your dad experience, like that was kind of like your angle at getting closer and closer to the hockey experience of hanging with your son. Did that play into each other at all, or did you feel like actually go a different route? Like, does your son, you showed him the videos too? What does he say about the videos that you made?
He loves the videos. He's always the first one to preview them.
Yeah.
He's like an editor of sorts. So, you know, he loves the fact that I do it. Has it brought me closer? In a way, it's funny in a way, because in the videos I capture a lot of offensive success, and my son's a defenseman. So, you know, how do I explain this? Because when I'm filming and the kids are on offense and they're scoring goals and they're in front of the opposing team's net, I'm capturing basically everybody but my son, because he plays on the blue line. But the minute that the puck leaves the offensive zone, I put the camera down and I focus on my son. So it's kind of weird, because I don't always capture him on video, but I'm 100% more aware of where he is and what he's doing on the ice, because of the flip side of that when I'm not watching him, I'm watching intensely and trying to capture the successful moments of the team and what the kids are doing. And I'm going to add a layer onto this, something that has come to me via one of the dads on the team, is now I've gotten into the habit of, as soon as a kid on the team scores, I grab that video and I send it right to the dad or the mom, whoever, right away, like in real time. Like, your son just scored, and this is the angle I saw it from. This is what it looked like. And one of the dads said to me that he really appreciated my play-by-play and the excitement that comes out of me when they score. And so I've become more aware of the excitement and the joy that watching these kids play brings me, that I wasn't 100% aware of before, because I'm standing there with the phone. Sometimes there are other dads around me, and I'm like hooting and hollering like everybody else. And when I send the raw video to the parent, they hear that. Mm-hmm. They don't. I haven't blanked it out and put music on top. So it's been a really fun experience, and it continues because my son's still doing hockey stuff. But it is definitely like, I think my son's very happy that my role became the video guy and capturing those moments, because my son loves watching the videos and reliving the memories. And spoiler alert, I only post the videos that we win. So when we lose, I don't usually make a video. I make it when we win, and I focus on the win. I focus on like the success, because there are other people, like the coaches, their job is to focus on what the kids did wrong and then instruct them and lead them to a path of fixing those mistakes. But I've been told too that the videos have given the coaches a lot of feedback that they wouldn't have gotten before, because they tell me, we don't see the goals the same way you see the goals. We see a pile in front of the net, and then the whistle goes and we go nuts. When we see your goals, we see where the kids are, their positioning. Are they where they're supposed to be when they're supposed to be there? Are they doing the things that we're teaching them? And it's been awesome, because this goes back to self-reflection. The kids and the adults have used the things I've captured they've used the the formative assessment to go back and teach the kids what they want them to do on the summative.
It's the game tape. We're
It's
basically using it as game tape, yeah.
Like, and they won the championship, and I like to think that they changed some things and improved some things because of the data I was able to provide them with. So, unless and you know me, I'm a collector, right? So once I started creating these videos, I had a hard time stopping, where it's just become the norm. But like when my son would play at home, my wife and my other son and grandparents would be in the stands, and I wouldn't be with them. And at first that felt weird. And I just said, listen, this is my role. This is what I do. So I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've talked way too much about the dad side of DeCodEd for me. Can I shift gears?
Yeah, do it.
I want to shift gears to your week. I want to shift because this week, you and I don't feel like we had a two-way street interaction. Like I inundated you with nonsense on Twitter and then personal texts, but I feel like you were not able, or for whatever reason, you did not respond to me in the normal fashion that you would. And at one point, you said that your week, something was going on with your week. You said, the words I'm going to use because I don't have any other words. You seemed more stressed, more preoccupied with work. Do you want to talk about that part of you this week and what was happening at work that had you not acting like your usual self from my perspective?
Yeah, sure. It's funny. There's I guess the best way to put the week is it was a week where there was oh, you had me thinking about this. So okay, so at the heart of it here's the, let's say, the big twist. I'll start with the big twist and I'll work backwards from that. I had a week where I didn't know, I didn't feel comfortable being defined by being a teacher. That's kind of, it was sort of like there was a weird kind of moment where I thought I'm not identifying with being a teacher this week. And it got me thinking about the ways that I've been really preoccupied recently, I think since the second semester, is in thinking of two things principally when it comes to teaching and I guess like teaching and non-teaching, but when I'm trying to sort of seeking who I am as a teacher, who I am as a man, husband, all this kind of stuff. So kind of, again, part of the heart of DeCodEd as well. And I started to question why how did I get at this? I started to question my comfort zone at being defined by my teacher side. It feels really vague. But when I started to think about what I depend on in order to communicate who I am, the conversations that I have, the people that I hang around with, the things that feed my interests, I got to a space where I think I'm not paying enough attention to, and I'm going to create a line here where I shouldn't, but I'm not, it's not that I shouldn't, but I'm going to create a line just to sort of clarify. I don't know if I'm paying enough attention to my non-teacher side. And when, the space that I got to is that so much of my day, my week, my weekend, no matter how hard I try, is consumed with everything teacher. My response to you, I think, was very much I just not connecting or taking care of it all my teacher side this week. Like, it's not that it's funny, like I had moments where I just didn't want to be defined by being a teacher, but I didn't know what I wanted to put in instead, because when I take that out, when I take out the fact that I'm a teacher and educator, that's where I was left with, what else am I actually promoting and talking about and putting out into the world? And we've talked, I mean, this whole podcast started with that, you talking about what else are you? What else are you? You know, the hockey connection. So that's where that happened. And it became reinforced my sense of sort of ill at ease was reinforced by how complex the week was, just all the little things that I was sort of hustling from one spot to another, and sort of like, so it was just reinforced by the way my work week looked. Part of the week was fueled by the discussion we had on the on-ramp. Who knows, maybe we'll touch on that in the podcast. Part of it had to do with a dissatisfaction in how I've constructed my feeds. So the things that are not specifically, so my digital feeds, so the stuff that is actually creating sort of deeper thinking for me in my feeds. And then the other part of it is just also exploration of self. So what am I not doing for myself that I should be? So your question coming in at that moment sort of bounced quite aggressively off that mindset that I had. And it didn't get and so the irony is that it didn't get any better, it didn't get any clearer. It's still something that, you know, I'm going to have to work it out. It's just it's the work. And this isn't me saying that I need to leave. Like, I'm not sort of looking to kind of pull the cord and need to get out of teaching, but there's things about teaching that I've always been fascinated at, how quickly I can commit to my professional life. And I'm a little bit more reserved in my personal life, how I sort of like commit to things. And I think I need to shift that a bit. I need to shift that where I'm putting equal measure of intention into my personal life as I do. And I'm not saying that I got to take stuff away. It's funny for me. It's the fact that I'm not balanced. I'm not inputting the appropriate energy into my personal life that I so seemingly naturally do in my professional life. Like, a busy work week is seems to happen without much effort, but I don't know if I'm putting the same energy into creating a busy personal life. And I think that's where I'm struggling right now to get to that space. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Do you want a specific example?
If you want. I think what you did, I get what you're saying. You can go.
But here's the thing. I'm like running the fence line, right? So someone that's in EDU would be going, oh, okay, yeah, I know we have busy weeks and we give it up for the kids. I don't know if, you know, anyone listening is like, yeah, but specifically, Clef, what is the thing that sort of got you? I think because part of talking about what becomes difficult in the work week in teaching is that sometimes the contexts by default are too specific and you can't speak to them, right? They're ongoing issues. There's privacy issues. You can't speak to that. But suffice it to say, this year, one of the things that I decided, this happened back in September, is that I was going to start connecting with committees. So I wanted to start seeing a broader version. So starting a new school, meeting new people, I'm intentionally trying to build a broader in real life network of connections. Like, it's just something I think it's funny, 14, 15 years into teaching, I think I'm ready to start nurturing these connections. Now on the other side is I've typically worked in small contexts. Like, I've always been in small teaching spaces. So, you know, I've never been in the core per se, where you automatically have a large department and you have these bigger meetings and you have these board initiatives that all kind of connect there. But to that end, the tension that's starting to arise now of committing to these committees is really making my work life dense. So work life and personal life are still the same size. I look at them still the same size, but the work life is becoming so dense that it's starting to it's just starting to sort of tip the scale. Is that the good way to do it? Maybe it's like pull it. Maybe a tug of war is a better example instead of going like this. But it's really starting to pull the energy just the right thing. So what's happening is the energy that I'm spending, I'm not spending equal measure here to develop the same kind of cool and interesting things that have nothing to do with school. School has just kind of consumed everything. Everything becomes an extension of an activity in school. And it's more because I guess in some ways, I'm not paying attention to home life stuff in a way that I should be. So that's the thing. That's where I was. Yeah, I'm not caring about work right now, to paraphrase my own text.
I don't even know where to go with that, except like I get it. I get what you're saying. I also get the this cultural thing, which isn't really new anymore, but about like the badge of being busy, like an honor. Like, no, I can't do. I'm really busy. I'm too busy. I hate that. I hate that because some weeks, like you're saying, some weeks are like that. Some weeks are like, I dislike. Okay, so every weekend my wife will say to me, "What's happening this coming week?" And we'll look at our phones and we'll look at the calendar. And some weeks are insane. Like some weeks are like, okay, so this is happening on this day. I have a meeting here. Then this is one of the kids has this on this day, that day. And then we look at each other and we're like, this is nuts. And neither one of us, if I'm the more busier one, like I'm the one that I like to do certain things that take up time more so than my wife, but even I'm getting to the point where I'm like, okay, no, I don't want to be doing any of this. What I want to be doing is I want to be at home. I want to be chilling here, but then I also want to be pursuing my interests, right? Not everybody else's interest or whatever it is that's going on with them. So I really, this thing of busy, I don't like it. I know that there are things we have to do. We have obligations, but it's crazy when, somebody will say to you, hey, when can we get together? What about this day? And you say, no, I can't because of whatever, which it shouldn't have priority, but it has to, because it has to do with work, or it has to do with like a family obligation that nobody's really interested in, but they still have to do it. I get it. And I could feel like, and so I just didn't hear from you really this week. And it was like, okay, he's got stuff that has to get done. He doesn't have time for my shenanigans. So on your end, you're probably like, wow, this guy's got a lot of free time this week. He keeps hitting me up with all these like menial items or questions or comments or whatever.
I'll say that it's so just to, to give you the inside, that didn't occur to me. Like that kind of thinking didn't occur to me. And again, it's not I choose to engage with the content. Like I feel like I have to, as do you, I'm sure. Many people, maybe. I choose to engage with the sort of prompts and notifications that come in, and more times than not, what happens, and I think I mentioned this to you before, is like I kind of forget. Like I'm like, okay, I read it, and then I kind of get caught up doing something else, and I forget to come back to it, and then I realize I have a chain of possible responses too, and I can't tell you how many times, in general, someone has sent me multiple kind of texts that come end to end, and I'm like, oh crap, like how I got to answer this in the right order. So like, I'm kind of like, because I do want to answer. It's at the end of it, I do want to answer, but I didn't have any sort of thoughts where it was bothersome per se. I just had stuff that was keeping me from getting to that space at all. Like I just couldn't get to that part of my week. So.
Like I said, I get it. Totally. Can we shift again?
Yeah, do it. This is the Sunday edition. It's a little more freestyle, I guess.
While I get my notes prepared, do you want to tell our listeners what happened to our Saturday edition of the podcast?
Oh yeah, sure. I slept in.
Yeah.
No, you know what? It's so I slept in, but sorry, I don't want to say but because it's not like I have any counter to it. I slept in. I have a vibrating alarm, and I just did not. I wear my Apple Watch to bed. Actually, I've always had, before that I had a like a G-Shock watch that had a vibrating alarm. So I've always had an alarm that is not audible. It just kind of buzzes on my wrist and it wakes me up. Awesome. And 99% of the time it works. It actually does. I'm not a guy that sleeps in. I'm not a guy that sort of is hustling in, after the meeting is started, like, oh, my alarm didn't go off, but it happened. That's it. No excuses.
And hey, none needed.
Yeah.
Just because I don't know about you, but I've been guilty of like popping out of bed like 5 minutes before we're supposed to be on air, and texting you and be like, okay, I'm setting it up. It's one of those you have to pop out of bed and function, but you're like 10 steps behind. Your brain is on autopilot like you wouldn't believe, and you really shouldn't be where you are, but your brain has gotten you there from sheer habit. So I've done that before, but so I wake up really early for this podcast yesterday, and even my wife was like, what are you doing? So like, because I had things that had to happen at certain times yesterday.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting here and 7 o'clock rolls around. I'm like, oh, he must be getting his coffee. We hit 7:10. I'm like, oh, maybe the kids are up and they're giving him a hard time. So then that's when I messaged you at 7:14. I'm like, hey, are we still on? And then I think at like 7:58. So I'm on the computer, right? It's all fired up. It's ready. So I'm doing some work on the side that needs to get done that I can do while I wait. And then around 8 a.m. you hit me up and you're like, dude, sorry, I slept in. And I'm like, the first thing I did was laugh out loud. The second thing was I took that little chip and I put it in my backpack, because then that means now I can do that and I won't feel as bad because it's already happened. I wasn't the one that did it.
Yeah.
So it's like there's the selfishness that I always tell you about. So I'm like, okay, I can keep that one in my backpack, because hey, if it can happen to Clough, it can happen to anybody.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I tap my watch when I wake up and I'm looking at it, and because I don't have my glasses on, right, I have to put it so close to my face. I'm like, what time is it? Like, oh. And then what I realized is that the watch in itself doesn't have enough power, because I could, as I'm walking down the stairs, I could send you a text from the watch, right? Like, that's just handy. I got to go find my phone. I'm like, where's my damn phone? I got to send them a message. And then the other funny part to it is then my kids get up. So I'm actually sitting there as my kids are waking up. They weren't up yet, but I'm sitting there at a time when my kids aren't used to seeing me, right? Because normally I'm not coming upstairs, until just taking her right to art class, but I'm there earlier than that. And it's funny, and they come downstairs, they're like, oh, cool, you're done. Like, how's Roland? I'm like, I'm not sure. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I slept in. We didn't have our conversation this morning. And then Madeline, my daughter, she's just like, oh. I'm like, I think it's all good. Don't worry. I think we're good. She's in this space right now. The thing that makes that interesting, that little particular bit, is right now she's starting to get more phone calls from friends, and they're coming to the house. And she's a little bit like me. Like, she kind of like, okay, I'll get back in touch with them when I can, all that kind of stuff. But they're calling more frequently now. So we're saying, you got to return the call. So I can't help but think that part of the was a little bit fueled by me not doing as well as I should in sort of representing the being available for conversations.
Hilarious.
Yeah, she's holding me accountable.
Thanks for filling in that time as I found what I was looking for. That was good. So I saw a tweet, and the only reason I saw it is because you responded to it, so it ended up in my feed.
Okay.
I don't know how to say this lady's name, but I think it's Mary.
Mayor.
Mayor, sorry.
Mayor, yeah.
I don't know. I'm sorry. Mayor Cervenak.
Yeah.
Okay. So she tweeted yesterday, this is what she said. Districts who send 2 teachers to a professional development conference so they can come back and turnkey what they learned to the entire staff do not care about their teachers' professional development. Just saying. Now that's not what really got me. I started reading the thread, and I loved what you said about the resources come back to the school, but the learning rarely does. And then I kept reading, and as I was reading, I was like, whoa, like this, what people are saying is so true. You know, you go to a conference, and sometimes there's an explicit instruction that when you come back, you will share. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's implicit that you come back and provide your colleagues with some knowledge of what occurred and what might be important. But as I'm reading, I was like, holy cow, like a lot of people are on the same page, and people who aren't on the same page have really important insights to offer. And so here's where I landed with this, and this is what I would love to talk about and hear your perspective on this. From reading the thread, I feel like, people are saying sending a couple of people to PD and having them come back and report or try to do something or inflict some kind of change doesn't tend to work. There needs to be a change in culture. There needs to be a change in expectations and habits, and that will lead teachers to changing the way that they do something in particular, or the way they teach a particular concept or idea. And then so that's what I got from it. And then I was able to connect it to what I'm currently doing with the leadership and innovation kind of pet project that I've taken on. And I was thinking about how hard it has been for me as a lone wolf to try and help my colleagues see the value in integrating particular technologies and how they fit with the curriculum, and how it can work in a pedagogical way so that what you're doing is sound and not just like a one-off or trying something experimental in a sense. And I've had a really difficult time, like as an individual. And I'm not trying to change the culture of the building, but what I'm trying to do is infuse an awareness and some like practical skills to help these teachers integrate some of these tools that we have to help their students achieve, and to help these students understand that there are all kinds of tools in this world that can help them with their learning, and to help them show their learning, and to help them discover new things about who they are and what their passions might be. Like, it's a bigger picture than just school, and I think back to my experiences as a teacher and seeing students go down different roads because of things that they were exposed to because of me and my love for tech. But wow, I was like, this thread is so deep. And it's one of the reasons why I like Twitter so much, because it allowed me to reflect on the work I do, and it allowed me to reflect on like an actual thing that I'm in the middle of doing and the frustration I'm feeling. So I get the original tweet of, yeah, you send a couple of people, they come back and they'll sit down at a division meeting or something and talk about it, and then everybody moves on. And so why is it that these people get to go, or what is it? Just that the district had money and they could send people for their own personal professional development? Because it doesn't always come back to others. And I'm guilty of having gone to conferences or whatever and come back and not really reported, or reported but like nothing ever comes of it. Whereas what I'm actually doing now, I feel has more traction, me going into teachers' classrooms and me talking to teachers in the hallway and then taking that talk and moving it into action. And even with all that, I still feel frustrated. Like I still feel like I'm not making a dent, but at least I'm doing something. So I just wanted to talk about PD and sending people away and having them come back and try to provide some kind of impart some knowledge on their colleagues, but that really what's going to work is when you have like an army of people moving in the same way. And that's rare. When that happens, in my opinion, it's for big ticket items that's coming from the down from the district. It's coming from the top down, like numeracy. Like every school in my system, and I would say most systems, have a numeracy plan, and they are monitoring that plan, and they are putting money into that plan and lots of resources so that we can all move in that direction. And that is hard to do, and it's a beast. So everybody else who's not doing it like that, I feel like you don't get a lot of traction.
I think to back it away, and you know what? I'll just to speak to Mayor on the front end. I came across Mayor through Shane Ed podcast. What's Shane Lawrence? What's Shane's last name? The Ed.
I believe it is.
Is it Shane Lawrence? So I came across there. That's how I came across connected with Mayor. And to that end, Mayor's starting up she's got a very interesting backstory. So she's come out of education and is starting up a podcast looking for, I'm going to say, I guess, brave souls, individuals that want to speak to some of the things that are, I'm not encapsulating the theme of it, but she's looking to have guests that are willing to kind of talk about some of their challenges and their frustrations in education. But to check out, she has 2 episodes with Shane on the Ed broadcast. I think his current release and one that's just a few slots back. Very interesting story to listen to. And faculty room, I think is the name of her podcast. So that's context. So that's how I came across that combo. Where I get hung up in this conversation is asking what does the current culture of sharing look like of professional learning opportunities? And I have yet to see I see it in 2 sides. One, I know there are people that will not go to professional learning because they've been told, oh, by the way, if you go do this, be expected to present this at a staff meeting when you come back. Like it's ominous and it's threatening. And there are people that are just saying, you know what, forget it. That's not me. I'm not really comfortable doing that type of learning. Now that's fine. Like I actually don't have a big issue with that. If that's not a part of your learning, you see your learning as, highly personal, and you're not necessarily into the whole, now I'm going to stand up in front of the school and lead a session. Okay, so be it. I find it interesting that how rare it is that someone ever does that, though. So you have this, on one hand, you have this sort of strange, ominous threat of, yes, by the way, you will have to present. And then on the other hand, people rarely ever present. So then I ask myself, well, who is it that's actively going to these sessions then? So who tends to get to, not who tends to get to, but who typically goes to these sessions then? And I think that, there's this small number of people that go, probably because they're associated with some sort of an initiative or a committee. And then they come back and their committee kind of works it together. And then it's automatically tied to a board initiative like you were talking about. So that somehow makes it, so the learning that is kind of customized and cool that happens when you go to the session is kind of nutshelled by a board initiative. And it kind of diffuses it and neutralizes it. Do you know, like when I go looking at professional learning opportunities that my board is offering, there's something kind of like in my heart and soul that attracts me to it. And then the current format or non-format for sharing totally strips that soul from me. Like it doesn't make me like I should feel as good in the opportunity to share with my staff as I do going for one of these days away for training. Like I want to have that synchronicity in my thought. And I don't know if we have a model that works well. And what's fascinating to me is the number of, so that's one part that's kind of, the other part that's fascinating to me is how many individuals that I see at these professional learning opportunities, whatever PD sessions, if you want to call it, that are putting their learning into a Google Doc. And that's cool if that's how you sort of track your notes. But the number of people that are like, because I look at their screens and I'm like, man, they're writing everything down. And then right away I put my hand up. I'm like, will we get the slide deck for this? And they're like, yeah, we're gonna get the slide deck. And so I asked that great big question. These people still keep taking notes, so many notes. And I think to myself, that can't be for them. That looks to me like an accountability activity. And then I kind of go further, and I could be wrong. Could be entirely wrong, but that's, in my opinion, what I'm observing. Like, that's an accountability activity where they're taking down so many notes because somebody back at the ranch has said, you're going to have to present this when you come back. And the downside is that, maybe that becomes a handout. If you're there for a 7-hour session or 6-hour session, you're there all day. It's really difficult to put that into a 15-minute or a 10-minute, oh yes, Clef, can you share your learning? Share your learning from a 6.5-hour session in 10 minutes in a staff meeting. So when I saw that tweet by Mayor, it sparked a little bit of like a, wow. It basically what it did, it kind of unified the universe. Like, wow, yeah. So this is a thing that other people have kind of observed. And it, that is, one of the cool things of having a digital PLN is that you have access to other people's thinking in that way. But that was my thinking on that. That's how I sort of wrestled through that.
Awesome. I just wanted to get your feel for that because as you're talking about it and I'm thinking about it, I'm laughing because of the times people have gone to like a 2-day conference, they come back and literally I'm like, how was it? They're like, oh, it was good. And then they tell you like, this was awesome and this was awesome. And I'm like, the bell rings and it's like, okay, see you later.
Yeah.
That's it. That means zero value came to me. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't go. I'm just saying if the intent is for them to go and then for me to pick up something that I couldn't pick up because I wasn't there, the answer is it's not happening. Unless if I'm so hyper interested in a topic or in a speaker, me, I'll already know about them and already know what their message is.
Mm-hmm.
And so it won't then at least I could talk to somebody about my knowledge of that person and their ideas and then compare it to theirs and maybe learn something there. But I don't remember the last time I was able to sit with someone and listen to them talk about a conference they went to or a 1-day PD session and got anything out of it. Here's a good one. My school has my school board, every school has a math lead or 2 math leads, and they get to go to math PD every now and again for a full day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not getting anything from that. Now I know like in April, starting tomorrow, holy cow, April.
I know.
Tomorrow. I signed up for one of the math leads to come into my classroom and to do a fraction talk and to kind of demonstrate it for me and then like in-service stuff, and that's going to be valuable. But aside from that, he comes back, say, how was it? He says, good, and we all move on. There's no value in it for me. Now for him, I believe that he gets a lot out of it because he actually gets to go and talk with people about numeracy, and he gets to do activities there that help him understand how he can take that information or those ideas and then apply them in the classroom to help his students with their numeracy or understanding of mathematics. But I'm not getting any of that. Now, am I bothered? Yes and no. Like, yeah, it'd be great for me to become a better math teacher because, as you know, I've embarked on a journey this year of becoming a better math teacher. But also, I know he has a life, and I don't expect him to. Well, here's the other thing too. When's he supposed to fill me in on his 1 day workshop after school? That's not happening. I need to be in other places after school. Before school, possibly, but is he going to be able to get the whole primary division in one room for half an hour before school? Probably not, because it's not a mandatory meeting. Like, there's maybe a lunch and learn. I would go to one of those. And so you start to see how these things break down in real life application. Anyway,
I think that's why I said we have to examine the culture. Like, we have to examine the culture, sort of like how we've kind of arrived here. Because we're also, I think, in a space where moving forward, some of this is going to start to be questioned through, budgetary constraints as to how often and what versions of PD will be offered, like these 1 day, 2 day, multi-day training sessions. And my fear is that because of our willingness to sort of create the Google Docs, that we're going to shift that sharing in this particular case is akin to learning. And I don't know if that's true. So if I'm at a session and I'm busily sort of, whacking away on my keyboard, trying to capture everything that's said so that someone on the home front has all the information from the session, well, okay, that may be valuable for someone, but I think that if people going to these sessions either A, are going because they're passionate about it, or B, someone in the school said, hey, you know what, tap, 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 you might be interested in, like, you're really good at this too, so it might fire your passion. I like to think of those first two starting points as having some stage for when you return that you can sort of speak to them and share your passion. And I'm not seeing that reciprocity. So you end up with 1,000 Google Docs from 1,000 different people's sessions, all shared in the same team drive, but there's no life in it. Like, there's nothing nurturing about it. There's nothing that could potentially spark somebody else's interest in it. And I get, like, here's the one upside. If it's a part of an initiative, let's say like student success or transitions or literacy, I get the value in having the good detailed notes. And then when somebody is coming in, they have access to those notes. But I can't tell you how many times, I've had one of these folders shared with me, and there's like 1/2 of a note that I look at. Like, I don't, thank you for, doing the work that I don't have to do. And because I know this, sometimes I'm mind blown when I go to one of these other, like a learning opportunity, and I see people recreating the notes all over again. So they're not adding to the notes that were already created or kind of amending or putting comments on the side, like kind of using the collaborative and editing tools that are part of a Google Doc. They're creating a whole brand new doc. And so I think to myself, like, why? Like, and we still haven't had the opportunity to talk about it kind of as the group and say, this is kind of cool.
And then you have to think about who benefits from this mode of PD. Like, who benefits from having this continue? This, the 1 day you go here and then you bring back value that is never brought back to your staff. Who's benefiting from that? What's the flip side of that? That's, as you know, I'm interested in that side of it. I'm also, like, sometimes taking notes, as you said earlier, is a great way to make it appear as though you're paying attention and that you've gathered some goods when really you have nothing, but you do have some kind of artifact that may suffice certain people's like needs, or to make them feel good that like, oh, look, no, he wrote notes. He went and he listened and he paid attention. This was good money that we invested, right? Like the whole thing just, it doesn't sit well with me.
I did the I can remember I've done I'm a pretty decent note taker, typer. I've done the note taking, let's say for staff meetings. And the better I got at it, the more dead inside I felt. No joke. The more dead inside I felt. And at first I'm like, whoo, it's just flowing through me, right through my eyes and my ears, right down to my fingertips. Like you get in the flow, right? And then all of a sudden I'm like, I'm a freaking robot here. Like I feel dead inside. And I just think to myself, if I'm going to go to a session, I'm going to do my sketchnoting. I'm going to have my coffee. I'm going to talk. I'm going to be the guy that when they're trying to get the session back together, I'm chatting with Lori here beside me because we're sharing an experience that person just sparked off. And the reason I can do that is because they're going to share the slide deck with me. But what I'm not going to get is Lori's experience. I'm not going to get to talk to Lori when I go back. I'm just Lori. Hey, Lori. I'm not going to get a chance to talk to Lori ever again. I think about it that way, right? So if I'm busily typing away, and the only acknowledgement that I have for Lori is when I realize that she's looking at my screen and I kind of look over at her and I go back to typing again. Like, I don't know. I think to myself, I'd be better off watching this on a webinar.
I'm just going to throw this story out and then we can shut this down if you want. When was it? 2 years ago? There was an initiative that was pushed out in my system, and we got an email from the principal saying, this initiative is starting in a month. I need two people who are interested in going. It's an ongoing thing. And, there were some prerequisites and there was also some like expectations. And I looked at it and I was just right up my alley. And so the principal said, just email me back, tell me you're interested. So I emailed her, but I also went to her office, sat down with her and said, listen, I'm really interested in this. And here are the reasons why. I told her these are some of the things I'm currently doing in my classroom and they flow well into this PD. Here's the plan. This is why I want to do this. And it was very selfish. And that was full disclosure, basically the selfishness. Like, I need to do this because this is how I'm going to leverage it. This is what it's going to do for me now, what it's going to do for my kids as we move through this. How will I connect this to my staff, to your staff? I will invite them to come and see me do what I do with it. I will blog about it. And I will create artifacts for them to see, and I will tweet about it. And so if they're interested, then this is what I will refer them to. So it was like 21st century learning for me, with me sharing in a 21st century learning type of way. And so if you're willing to look at what I've shared, then you're willing to kind of step into like the realm of what these people want us to do in our classrooms. It was around global competencies and deep learning. And then before I left, I said, I'm going to tell you one more time, I really want to do this. And I know that other people are going to come to you with their reasons, but I feel like I've shown you, and this is where I used some of my work credit that I had in the bank. This is where I made my withdrawal. I said, you've seen the work I'm doing. You know that I'm moving in this direction. I'd like to become more skilled at it. So rather than this is something I'd like to learn how to do, I'm already doing it. I want to go deeper, and it's going to benefit the kids, and it's certainly going to benefit me. And I'm happy to talk about it with my colleagues, but nobody's going to come and want to talk to me about it. A couple people did, but generally it's the same thing that I do with them. They're like, oh, Roland went to a workshop yesterday. Great. What's happening today? Right? Like, let's move on. That happened yesterday. And she let me go. And it was awesome because I was able to do all kinds of amazing stuff, and I was able to go deeper with my learning. But I think that's where I'm at right now. like as an educator, that's where I'm at. If I'm doing something, I'm doing it because I'm interested in it and I can see the benefit for my students. And that's where I'm finding, like, that's where I'm reigniting my energy and my passion for the work that I'm doing. I knew that I had to do something with numeracy because of the way I feel about it and the direction my school board is going. But that doesn't fill my cup. You know, I find other ways to fill my cup.
I always wonder around who isn't getting it. So who's not benefiting from it? And that just seems like so many more people. Yeah, because the other part too is sometimes individuals consistently keep going to these training sessions and it's not making it back. And it's not to say those individuals should be kept from doing these training sessions. It just makes me think about legacy and how well are we sort of setting other people up to be passionate about similar passionate topics. If you never get a chance, or because your schedule somehow prohibits you from doing it, or somehow you're thinking to yourself that, you know, you shouldn't go. And the reason you're thinking you shouldn't go is because you've never gone, not because you're not interested. So I just, yeah, it's who's not being offered this stuff, maybe because their schedule is kind of tricky, or they're not standing right there on the edge with their fist in the air saying, I really believe in this. Maybe that's a leadership question, you know, leadership's ability to kind of see people for their interests, for their training, for their skills, their passion. And I would say big staff, it's hard to make those connections. It is. But yeah, the conversation that on Twitter that sparked, I was curious as to whether or not, and I didn't push it. I didn't get back to push it, but I would like to hear, like, how are other jurisdictions or districts or school boards rolling with this? As in, what does that culture of sharing look like in real life once the person comes back from a session? And it can be formalized. Don't get me wrong. I'm okay with a formalized kind of conversation, but I think it should also be showcased in some way and not be just kind of like shoved into that 10-minute slot of any other business at a staff meeting. Because you might, in fact, light someone up with, and we started in our on-ramp, I think it was mentioned, talking about that whole, you know, the way TED Talk, you to have your TED Talk. How do you light someone up in the same way? Any individual that's done a TED Talk typically looks pretty lit up about what they're talking about. So how do we provide some sort of a context that someone can shine in that exact same way? Yeah, that was my thinking. So
I wonder if our conversation would have been as fruitful had we done this yesterday. I wonder.
I don't know.
I guess we'll never know.
I guess we'll never know.
Okay, so go ahead.
I don't know. It's one of those I don't know.
We're entering into...
How many minutes have we been up?
Oh, dude, I don't know. Okay,
so I'm going to throw this out. Only because I think it's a very important mention. I don't know. Remember, I think our last episode, and I'll throw some kudos out to Schreffler. Part of our convo was you have an idea, and I'm totally paraphrasing this wrong. I got this thing in my head, and I don't know what to do with it. And then there was the response to that. Well, that's kind of like what the podcast is all about. And we're sort of in that space. So it's just something that I'm going to carry with me through the week. So it's a little bit like homework. It's a little bit like I'm on fire, but I don't know what I'm thinking about it right now. And I got to say it has to do with the Debbie Donsky tweet. And the tweet in itself is it's a post that speaks to potentially the privilege of a moment, the power of a privilege within a moment at a ice cream shop where one person asked for an extra spoon with the ice cream and was told no. And then another person went in, didn't buy a single thing, and was given spoons, given cutlery, without question. In this case, it was a individual, a black male, that had bought the ice cream and had asked for an extra spoon, was told no. And then it was a white female that went in and got the spoons for free without. And we started, this was part of our on-ramp, and we were talking about, I think we were both talking about our privilege within the classroom. We were talking about, I was talking about my mind shift of moving between, am I a colonialist? Am I an apologist? Am I an ally? And not kind of having this as new thinking, but having it as necessary thinking. And then this tweet was part of our conversation. And I think ultimately for me throughout this week, I got to reach back out to Debbie and sort of have a little more discussion around this. Potentially her colleague who she wrote the tweet about. I think I got to find out more. I want to have more discussion around this. It feels like, I mean, it's going for ice cream, but it's a part of a larger conversation. And I think I want to pursue that a little bit more. So, yeah.
That's how we're going to end this podcast.
I don't know. It's the Mentos in the Coke bottle, right?
Yeah. Now we're sealing the bottle and we're not letting it explode. That's
you can share if you want. I felt like, you know what part of it is, I felt like I wanted to acknowledge that this tweet happened. I wanted to share that it has impact on me, but I also need to sort of add that I don't know how to work through that example. I think initially, I would sort of I would want to find a space that I was comfortable in order to decode this and kind of rip it apart and say, here's how this happened. This is why this happens. This is what we have to do next. And I can do that. I think I could do that. But there's also pieces of the story that I'm curious about. Pieces of the story I'm curious about the context. I'm curious about, as you pointed out in our discussion, you know, who else was in that space that heard this conversation take place. There's pieces to it that, if possible, I'd like to find out more. And one of the wonderful things definitely about Debbie is that she shares and she posts and she blogs and she writes about her experiences. And it's entirely possible that this could come out in a piece of her writing, but it sort of sparked my curiosity moving into this week, a thing to find out a little bit more information about.
Plain and simple. Things like this have happened too many times for the wrong reasons, which then leads people to feel that this experience also happened for the wrong reasons. So let me explain. A black man asks for a spoon for ice cream, is told no. A white woman walks in, does the same thing, and is given the spoons. That's happened too many times for the wrong reasons. What are the wrong reasons? Because people fear the black man. People are racist. People are intrinsically scared for whatever reason. Like, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to stir it up. I'm just saying, over history, too many times we've seen this type of situation happen because of racism. And sometimes people are aware of their racism and sometimes people are not aware. And so I think that's where people's head might go first. So as I said to you on the on-ramp, I appreciate you looking at the different layers that could exist. And even I brought one of them to light, saying, you know, maybe when he went in, for whatever reason, he talked to one employee and they wouldn't give him the spoons, and we don't know the reason. If it's not racism or whatever, white privilege, we don't know. But maybe there's a really good reason. And then that person walks away, and then the white woman walks in and talks to a different employee whose perspective on giving out spoons is completely different. Who knows, really? Like, to be fair, who knows? But because this type of situation has occurred many times, we've seen a pattern. And therefore, I think, and hey, let's throw in some numeracy here. The brain loves patterns, right? We know this. We know patterns are attractive to the brain, that we look for patterns. And so here's a pattern, or it appears to be part of the pattern. And that's how we might be dealing with it. Now, I'm not Black, but I am a visible minority. And I can tell you, I've had experiences where I get a vibe that a person's treating me differently because of the way I look. And I've used it to my advantage, and it's been used against me. And so, I've lived both sides of that coin. And when I was younger and I would talk like this, my friends would dismiss what I'm saying. They'd be like, you're too hypersensitive and blah, 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 blah. But now I'm an adult, and I'm not worried about expressing how I feel about this topic. I have no issue with it because I've lived certain situations that have made me feel like I need to speak when I can. And so when I read that, when you brought that tweet to my attention and I read it, I shook my head. But I don't know who's working the Baskin Robbins. It could be a couple of young people who just, maybe one person just says no to everybody for everything and somebody else is more easygoing. I don't know. And I'd love to know. But the pattern's not one that lends itself to the questions you're asking. But I'm glad that there are people like you who are asking those questions, because people like me are tired of seeing this and hearing about this. And hey, I'm not at work, right? I'm at home talking to my buddy on my podcast. And so I'm telling you how I feel at this moment. If this was presented to me in my classroom, then I would not be responding this way. So if my students were talking to me about something that happened to them, they were in this type of situation. Like if a student said to me, and I think I mentioned this on the podcast, that my class is predominantly not a white class. If a student said to me, hey, my family and I, we were somewhere and we asked for something, we said, no, you're not allowed to have that. And then, we saw somebody else ask for the same thing and they were white and somebody gave it to them. The same person said no to us, gave it to them. How would I deal with that? I would deal with that in a completely different situation than how I'm dealing with it here with you, because I'm responsible for these students. I'm responsible for educating them in an unbiased and a different fashion. But I'd be able, I believe, to be able to connect with my student because I've lived this, so I understand where they might be coming from and why they might be thinking the way they are. Long story short, I don't know about you. I walk around being aware of how I look, and I walk around thinking before I act most of the time, because I need no trouble. And I joke with the hockey dads about this, because they're all white, middle-aged men just like me, and a couple of them are police officers. And so we talk about this type of thing. And last year I was at a tournament and there were three of us, and we were standing. We weren't sitting. The stands were up high and we were down low to watch our kids play. And we were excited because our team was winning. The kids were doing really well. And there was three of us, two white guys and myself. And one of the white dads was really loud. Like, he's known for being loud and aggressive, but not, if you know him, he's not looking for trouble. He just gets super pumped and doesn't know how to control that, or doesn't want to. I don't know. This guy comes over to us and looks at me and starts addressing me. And I wasn't even the one yelling. But automatically, for some strange reason, I'm now the center of attention. So much so that after the game, the coaches say to me, "Why was that guy yelling at you?" And I'm like, "Oh, so you were standing this many meters away, and what you saw was a man come to me out of three guys, two of them losing their minds and me relatively under control, and the guy addresses me for the behavior of the two other men." Like, it's mind-blowing. Did that man come and talk to me? I don't know why he spoke to me. So if we use the Clough principles, Was he just having a bad day and I made eye contact with him first? I don't know. Or was it because he's like, there was something about me, the way I look, that he just directed his, and he was, he used a couple of swear words, used a couple of quality words there that wasn't appreciated in that setting. But why? Why me? I don't know. But the why me's happen enough times that I ask, why me?
Mm-hmm.
And here, so let me throw another story at you to balance this out. I don't remember where I was. I was in a store and something was happening. Somebody in front of me was buying something. They were really slow. And I feel like the man behind me was starting to become aggressive and upset. An old white man. When I mean old, I mean like elderly, mobility issues, an old man. And so he's to get riled up behind me. And then I pay and he pays and I'm walking out. And he says, hey, you. And he's talking to me. And now I'm like, oh God, like what's this guy doing? Thinking based on, him being a little bit aggressive behind me. Now he's talking to me. I'm like, what? I said, yes. He says, I like that beard. You know who you look like? And I'm like, who do I look like? He goes, that basketball player that has that big beard. And I'm like, oh yeah, James Harden. And then all of a sudden, there's no issue here. This man said he recognized that I resembled a famous basketball player, and then we started talking. Turned out he was a really cool dude at that moment in time. But that's not where my head was going when he said, hey, you. I thought, oh, this guy's going to give me crap for something, or he's going to engage me in something I don't want to engage in.
So here's this, and this is you kind of sparked this up in me. So me going in and asking for, a question, at the ice cream store for the extra spoon, and not, or using the bathroom, or even information. If the person responds unkindly to my request, not unkindly, if they don't comply with what I'm asking, they say no, I'm more likely to sort of think, oh, like, what's up with that guy? What's up with that girl? Like, I'm sort of like flipping it and saying there's something, and then I wonder if we reverse it, me walking in, I'm a person of color, and that someone says no. Is there a moment where they're saying that because they perceive something wrong with me? And, is there that opportunity to sort of like, when we talk about I have the privilege of pushing that back on the person and saying entirely, this is you are doing the wrong thing. And I wonder about the flip side of that, is if I'm walking in and I look like I'm too ethnic and I make a request, if it is entirely always going to be about my body in the space, as in there's something wrong with me. Like, I can't get to that space where I can just walk away and go, that guy was just an ass. No, there's something about me. There's something about me that this has been. And much like your example of this dude sort of wanting to talk about your beard, and it's starting from a place of, this is going to be about me. It's not going to be necessarily about this guy being an ass. It's going to call out something about me that he may show disapproval for. Cool that it shifted away from that. Were you aware of the moment that you were able to detach from that stress, anxiety, that here we go again? Were you aware of that moment? Did it completely disappear afterwards? Or did you kind of shift back into it and go, whew, that was a close one. I could have been called out in a totally different way for my beard. Shoo, good thing it was a positive one. Like, coming away from it, was there any kind of echo, or could you take that as an entirely positive experience and just kind of say, that was really cool?
I remember the moment that I felt like it wasn't going the way I thought. And then we just had the conversation, and it was a good conversation. It was funny that the man You know, like he's like, hey, you look like a basketball player, but I don't know the guy's name.
Hmm.
He engaged me in something that I enjoy. I love talking about the beard. And so, I mean, I was like, right on, let's do this. What did it do for me? It reminded me, and it continues to make me aware that I, I need to be open. So let the situation play out as it may, not to dismiss what I'm thinking or feeling, but to be open to the possibility that maybe it's not going that way. So
Hmm.
I don't want to walk around being so close-minded that, someone says, hey, I want to talk to you about your beard, and then I freak out because I think it's going one way when really it's not.
Hmm.
I need to be open and aware to deal with what comes at me. So in this situation, the nice old man who, and I obviously boxed him. I'm like, oh, here we go. We got this old fashioned dude who's 80 years old who's going to talk trash now about, you know, that I'm ethnic. That's where I was going. That's where my head was going based
Hmm.
on the evidence that was provided, the data that was provided to me minutes before he spoke to me. Right. If he was standing behind me and, he said, oh, you're getting some Ben and Jerry's. I love that stuff too. And then we walk out and he says, hey, you. Well, then it's a completely different conversation in my mind based on the data that was provided to me minutes earlier.
Hmm.
So what did I get? Like, just be aware and be open and remember where you are and who you're with. So when I'm with my kids, it's got to be different. I feel like I need to be responsible for my actions, but I also need to speak up for what I believe.
Hmm.
So because I need my kids to see that. It's also that I'm a teacher. I'm a classroom teacher in Ontario, and there are standards that I need to live up to, and that never goes away. And so I'm aware of that as well. And then I just deal with the situation as it comes, regardless of the feeling or the flinch. Right? I'm going to feel
Yeah.
a certain way, and then I need to know: am I going to run, or am I not going to run? Am I going to fight? Am I not going to fight? And when I say fight, I don't mean physically. I just mean like, am I going to engage? Or am I going to disengage? And it all depends. And that awareness is good for me, and it's good for me to know that it could go either way. And it happened. It happened Friday night. Friday night we went out for dinner, and we went to a restaurant that's predominantly the clientele are older people, like retired old people. And I was very aware that people were staring at me here and there. Why? I don't know. I mean, it could have been that my beard was like huge, and they're just like, that guy, like the same way I look at someone when I see someone with a really big beard. I'm like,
Dude,
oh, God,
I meant to tell you, your beard is looking glorious. You it was nicely shaped.
Thanks.
You're
I'll let Sharon know. She's the one that does my beard. But
That's good.
I'm aware that I'm with a white woman, and my kids resemble me kind of. And they've got olive colored skin, but they don't look as ethnic as I do. So I'm very aware of that. And is it unfortunate that I have to think this way? I don't know. And you know what? I don't care what people think. I don't care if somebody thinks I'm being too sensitive, and I don't care if people, are like, oh, he spends a lot of time thinking about this, that. That's my reality, and they're going to have their reality, and it's all good. But this is how I live my life. Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know. And I'm just saying that for everybody who's listening. I don't care whether they think it's fortunate or unfortunate. You know, what sealed the deal for me was after 9/11. After 9/11 happened, I was working in an adult high school, and I was one of the guidance counselors. They called me an intake and assessment officer, but really I was a guidance counselor for the students that were at the adult high school, and the students coming in, I would do intake and assessment to see where they would be placed. And I'll never forget, it was like maybe a week after 9/11, and it was a Friday, and on the Friday we did registration, and there was this older woman. So I was like 23 or 24 at the time, and like young, right? Like I didn't know anything. And the way it worked was people come in, they fill out the forms, and then the admin assistant, when I'm done talking to somebody and I send them on their way, the admin assistant just grabs the next intake folder, gives it to me, and then I call up the person's name and we meet. I was given the folder, and I didn't have, I think I had a goatee at the time and I had hair. So I looked a little bit different, but I still had the facial hair. And I called the name on the folder. And this lady who was probably, I'm thinking 40s or 50s. And I called her name and I looked at her and she acknowledged me. And then she said, this is what she said. She said, "I'm not meeting with him." Now, at the time, it's safe to say, I think, that a lot of people were very aware of what just happened. It was a global thing. I think there was the people that hate ethnic people were using this to their advantage. Other people were like, "Oh my God, what's happening? How could this happen?" But the minute she said that, "I'm not meeting," and she pointed, she's like, "I'm not meeting with him, not meeting with that guy." It was like, okay. So I put the folder back down. I picked up the next folder and called out that name. It was just business. Like, let's move on. Let's go to the next person. And I think what happened was, I don't know for sure because I kind of left the area and sat somewhere else, but I think the other guidance counselor, the head of guidance, said, "I'm not meeting with you. He took your folder. He called your name. You meet with him." And I think there was like, "Well, I'm not meeting with him." And then it was like, "Well, then I guess you're not, like, we're not doing take an assessment for you today."
There's no meeting.
No, there's no meeting. He pulled your folder. And I mean, unless you have a valid, like, unless you want to come over here and talk to me about, him from somewhere.
Yeah. Conflict of interest.
Yeah. That's a whole different thing. But if you don't know him, and he's a Catholic educator who's been like totally checked up and of good character and on and on and on for someone, having that job. Anyway, I think that person left and that was the end of that. But that was like, I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that. It was just outright and blatant. Now, did it have to do with the way I looked? I don't know. Or was it just because I was a male and she didn't want to meet with me? I don't know. The Clough principle. I don't know all the answers to all those questions. All I know is some terrorists just blew up two buildings in New York City and tried to kill a lot of people. And they happen to look a little bit like me. And so now, am I, I don't know. And so, I don't know, that just lives in my mind. Do other people experience that? I don't know. But having grown up, looking different, eating different foods, that whole cultural piece, that was never, in my opinion, really, I never felt it was valued amongst my peers and amongst the people who took care of me, that this is what I am now today because of that. And the flip side is now I use it to my advantage, working with the kids that I work with now, the kids that look like me, and my job to help them navigate in a new world and to learn to love their culture and to be who they are, regardless of what people around them feel about who they are and what they look like, what they eat, what their name sounds like. So the ice cream thing hits hard, man. It hits hard because I don't know, but the pattern is not a good one, in my opinion, for many different reasons.
It's going to stick with me this week. Thanks for throwing down on that story, dude. That's a big story.
Problem.
I did not know that story. That's a first share. Man.
I'm glad that I was young and dumb. I'm glad I knew enough to put the folder down and pick another one up and just keep working.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in some ways, maybe I should be bothered that I didn't deal with that or debrief at the time. But in other ways, I'm like, no, I was at work. I was doing my job. And there was a ton of people on Fridays. And the goal was, you're going to love this part. The goal was to get through all those people before lunch started so that every Friday we would order out. And so I didn't want to still be working when everybody was eating. I wanted to be with the crew eating. And so it was like, I got really good at assessment intake because they called me the hammer. The older teachers that I got, they're like, you're the hammer. I didn't feel dead inside, but I knew how to do an intake interview to the point where I knew if you were lying to me, I knew what direction I should send you in. I knew when you'd give me a line that would tell me that things were deeper and you needed more time to talk to me. Like I just became fluent enough to feel good about my job. And I was like, this lady's a loser and I need to keep going because we're having lunch in 45 minutes and there's still like 17 people that need to be seen.
Yeah. That's awesome. Got to get to lunch.
Lone Star Cafe, baby.
I like Lone Star.
Lone Star. Yeah, it was good times before it was all over the universe. It was just in Ottawa at the time. Yeah, we rocked the Lone Star on Fridays.
All right. Should we call it there?
I think we're going to shut it down.
Let's call it there. Good chat, man.
Yeah, it was a good one. And 3 months left in the school year, man. Crazy.
Yeah. Next week's another cool, busy week. I got some fun stuff happening. So I think I'm back in the game again. I think it's one of those blips where, back to where we started, you're asking about my sort of absence, my digi absence. It was, I think it's sort of, for me, it's a matter of calling out what it is that's kind of like bugging me and then working towards finding a solution. So first things first, I'll go upstairs and see if I can have breakfast with the fam. Here we go.
Get after it and get it done.
Yeah. Sounds good.
I'm going to drink all this pop now.
Crush it.
See you next week.
Adios, man.